Today, why on earth are you here and why are you listening? Today, we're going to talk about why willpower is a lie. And Dylan ran a successful creative agency for a decade that was slowly killing him from within. And rather than reactive work, client chaos, he tried a whole bunch of disciplinary stuff and until he stopped and he said, let me change a couple of things. And he started redesigning the system.
This week on the Shameless podcast.
The lowest was, I was drinking, enough to alter who I was and not feel the obvious pain that was going on. Arguable whether it was enough to be dangerous, but there's no doubt. I can say one of the best things I've done is stop drinking. One of the best things I've done is live from a place of complete lucidity. And that place of not knowing what was next was super dark. If you take a minute to just breathe, you're going to find that your cadence is slower. You're going to let your body come into the motion, and you're going to feel what's the right thing to say. You're going to feel, now, how do I respond to this? And there's a power in that, because being willing to do the work within yourself, to feel like you can stand your own ground in your own space and speak from a place, I love this, speak from a place of a scar instead of a wound. So meaning I've processed these feelings enough to be able to express to someone that I've learned from them, or if I don't know, to be open to hearing the hard thing. Vulnerability is a two-way street, right? So when we come to a situation, when we come and just offload on someone, that's not being vulnerable. That's performance, right? But if I respect you and I know you respect me, then I know that I'm willing to share something about myself that you can hear, and I'm willing to hear what you hear back, or what you have to say back.
Sometimes we are afraid to do something. You fear shame. I don't want shame. We're trying to break that burden by sharing stories of courage, resilience, and we want to be able to celebrate your story.
Shameless.
Shameless family, welcome. I'm absolutely elated to have Dylan join us today, and it's an absolute pleasure having you today.
Thanks so much, DK.
So, the discussion today, at least the topic for today, is the trigger that actually makes leaders transform. And I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler alert. It is not willpower, it is not discipline, it is not the rod, but rather it's, well, actually, you're going to hear about it a bit later on. Today, why on earth are you here and why are you listening? Today, we're going to talk about why willpower is a lie. And Dylan ran a successful creative agency for a decade that was slowly killing him from within. And rather than reactive work, client chaos, he tried a whole bunch of disciplinary stuff and until he stopped and he said, let me change a couple of things. And he started redesigning the system. He built Sunny HQ as proof. This business has been able to drive the way that you look at productivity and reinvent from the old patterns. And I believe that we're going to be able to have a meaningful conversation that rewires how you think about change. Dylan, thank you and welcome to the Shameless T4L podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, DK.
And, the interesting part for me is, what is Sunny HQ, number one? And why on earth is willpower a lie? Because I'm just like, wait, so I just can't with enough will, I should be able to get over the freaking line. So why is willpower not the answer? But I really want to first jump into what Sunny HQ is before we get into why the hell willpower is not enough.
Sure. Yeah. So Sunny HQ we're essentially a WordPress, fully managed WordPress hosting business. So what that means is that when you have a website and it runs on WordPress, for those that are familiar with that platform, you need a place for your website to live. And the landscape of that today is very broad. Most people that have some awareness of hosting look at it. It's hosting can cost $10 and basically it's a commodity. And what I found a few years ago is that while that's one view of it, the reality is the operation from a day-to-day basis of running that website, let me put it to you this way, is much like your car. So most people that are listening own or lease a car. right? And we know that we have to keep the car maintained, right? You have to have gas in it and oil, have to change filters, you've got to register it. Well, if you imagine every day, if your relationship with the car was this, you walk out and literally every day you walk out and it's full of gas. It doesn't need service. It's washed and waxed. It's immaculate. So your entire relationship with the car is simply driving the car. And you're like, man, this is great. Let's say you go one day and you get in a fender bender and something's messed up and you're almost out of gas. You park it and you come out the next day and everything's boom, it's fixed. That's what we do for WordPress websites. So,
Wow.
and that's what I think is the very difference is we take on the responsibility of not just the hosting. It's not just a place where you put your, your ones and zeros, you put that website. But we take care of literally everything technical that happens. So all the updating of all the technology that happens. So plugins, the theme, WordPress itself. We manage the security. We manage the backups. We do all of those things with a very hands-on approach. And then for our customers, right, we are there for them by email and by phone to literally answer any question. No question is too difficult. No question is stupid to us, right? If they forgot to log in, we're there. If they need help with the form, they need to create a new page. So really, we're a full service, white glove, concierge level manager of their website. And so we really work in a partnership. And that came honestly out of a gap that I saw in the marketplace years ago. It was like, at the end of the day, you have someone who is running a business. Well, if your business isn't websites, then you don't know how to run your own website, right? It's like, I don't know how to change the oil on my car, right? I pay someone to do, well, I actually do, but it's a really dirty job and I don't know what to do with the oil. And so it's better to pay somebody, a fraction of what it would cost me to do it. And that's the same thing. And so we really bring a higher level of service, a service that I think that most people think is there. They think when they're hosting the website, because I've heard it 100 times, right? I've heard it, well,
Yeah.
I can't get this done, or I'm asking them this question and they don't do it. And I say, well, that's because they don't see that as their job. We do. And you can expect that kind of service from us.
Wow. And so then, I mean, I can only imagine that really helps a lot of businesses run more efficiently, right? You're supposed to delegate the things that are not necessarily your core business or outsource that, right? Because at the end of the day, what makes you your money should be where you're spending most of your effort and time.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And so I'm very curious as to how did you end up in this space? Like, because this has not been the thing you've been doing all your life.
Yeah.
How did you end up doing this? Because I feel like over and beyond seeing the gap in the market, there would have been a bit more than just that.
Yeah, I saw a real problem that I could solve. And, the business itself came out of, as you said, I ran a design agency before this, and that business I absolutely loved. It was a very creative business. We had thousands of customers over 10 years. We managed unlimited number of projects across radio, television, websites, branding, logos, brand strategies, basically every piece of creative kind of material that you could use to help a company state what it is and help a company promote itself. Had a fantastic staff. We won all the awards, made lots of money. But at the end of the day, what I realized over a slow period of time, I was really misaligned. So it came to a point where I remember this very vividly. I'm standing up in my office and it was very bewildering and saying, why am I doing this? Like, I didn't understand, even though, yes, we did great work. And as you said, I kind of willed my way through it, right? I found ways to prove the reason why I was doing it, but it was still misaligned, meaning, okay, yes, we provide a good business and I employ 25 people. So in essence, I'm helping these people take care of their families. And yes, we're providing marketing for hundreds of companies out there who essentially that's helping them promote their business, which is of course providing salaries for their people and they're providing services. But at the end of the day, I also looked at it and I remember saying, well, in 10 years, no one will care about this logo. No one will care about that service. No one will care about that website. And so there was, I think, part of it was a legacy was missing, right? I was like, I'm not providing any value. And it was difficult. That was the thing, right? That was this crux of saying, I'm not giving back in a way that's meaningful, that feeds my soul. And these are words I'm putting to it now, but I didn't have the language for it then. And what that translates now is I was misaligned. I knew that I could do more. I knew that I had more to offer. And a big piece of that was not just the service that I provide the people that work for me, or even the customers that we help, but it was the fact that I was running my entire business at the sake of my family. So I worked 14, 16 hours a day. And there was always a reason to work, right? Because it's easy to do. I'm providing for my family. And so I could stay late because I was providing for my family. What I was really doing is running from that relationship, right? I was comfortable with work. Well, I can figure these problems out. I don't know how to deal with that,
Deal with
right?
them.
I don't, I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the modeling to be able to do that. And at the time, I wasn't really up to the task. And so, flash forward, there was a breakdown in that business. I finally burned out. I let the whole thing crash. And what I learned from that is I learned, we often say, or I say it's really important, you can learn more from your failures, right? You can learn more from the things that you don't want. They may not tell you what you do want, but you know what you don't want. And what I knew going into this new business was I wanted more from my personal life.
So you talk about balancing the personal demands, or you're giving away too much of your personal life at the expense of, at the expense of your personal life, you're giving too much to the business. Now, I'm very curious to understand then, what does that look like to you, and where you're able to not sacrifice so much and still get the value and still drive and run a business? Because I believe that a lot of the time it's viewed as one or the other.
Well, yeah. So, and I think too, to be respectful of the stages of business is important, because there's no doubt that saying, although I think anything's here, I'm a big anything's possible person, right? But I do want to say that there's no doubt you're scrambling more in the very beginning, right? You're developing the ideas, you're excited and all the things, and you're figuring all the pieces, and you're trying to get financing and all of the, all the different aspects. But what I've learned, and I stress the importance of, you have to decide for yourself where you're comfortable, and defining that boundary, defining that line, right? So that might be, I'm only going to work these hours. I'm only going to work this long. I need to have this time available for these people, or these, it doesn't even have to be, you could be single, right? But it's important that you have another life to draw on. I mean, to spend that much time, soaked in that singular process, I think is, again, that's not sustainable. So I think you need to define that for yourself, and then you have to be strong enough to hold to it. So I go through this regularly, where and I coach people through this. If you have, and to throw out what you think is highly effective. The important thing is that we get more out of our heads and into our hearts. What do you feel? I feel, and not defining success too, being realistic. Well, if I need to get 10 things done today, but if you know in your heart it's impossible to get 10 things done, then make 5 things the success. And holding firm to that, because listen, I get it. For me, I have a long list of things that are on my plate right now. I could choose to force myself to do a great number of those, and I could do it today, right? But come 9 o'clock tonight, I'm going to be wasted. I won't have talked to my family. And at the end of the day, I'm probably kind of grouchy about it. And I'm thinking, I wish I didn't do it. I'm not even realizing the real success that was involved. And so I think that's a big part of it. So whether that's I'm just starting the business, or now the business has been running for 5 years, it's I think you have to define, and here's the power we have as entrepreneurs. You get to make the decisions, right? So you don't have an unrealistic well, you are the unrealistic boss in that scenario. If you say, well, you have to get these things done to be successful. And I think a lot of times we're too hard on ourselves. I move the bar. Be willing to move the bar, right? If I have my sights set on, okay, these are the things that I want to accomplish. And listen, I do this, right? So this week alone, 4 podcasts, I want to burn 2 videos. I have the beginning of design for our new website. We just finished our logo. I've got to manage 4 different projects, talk to the support staff. Well, you know what? At the end of the day, if I get to Thursday, or even Wednesday and say, I'm not on track for this, then I'm going to move the bar. I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to move that to next week. And that's okay. There's always, this is kind of a tough thing to say. There's always tomorrow. You do need, though, to set a goal, right? The flip side of that is you got to set a goal and not move into procrastination. But I think most entrepreneurs are more the mindset to overload themselves. The reason why I say move the bar is because I think it's really important, especially when we work for ourselves and we answer only to ourselves, that we define success and we allow ourselves to witness that success. It's easy. If someone's not there to pat you on the back, right? Which is deserved. It's easy to let all those things happen and do really great and just move to the next thing. It's really important for me that I recognize, man, you know what? I worked really hard. I got those things done. I did that. But I can only do that if I set realistic goals and I'm willing to shift and pivot. If I'm just not going to make those, I would rather accomplish half as much and celebrate that than I would, miss the goal and make 80% and then be pissed off about it the whole time.
Yeah. And so then, a lot of the things that you've talked about now seems or feels like a lot of introspection, right? And I'm incredibly curious to understand your thinking about, I guess, how you maybe remember yourself, how you look within yourself, how you reflect, and feel free to talk about 7 mirrors if you want.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the book that I'm finishing right now, The 7 Mirrors, A Guide to Remembering Yourself, that came from years of a lot of self-reflection. That came, it's a culmination of here are the things that I've learned. And it's cool because it's not just here are the things that I've learned and how they related to the time I learned them, but I reflected over decades and was like, well, that makes much more sense. This is why this happened. If I would have done that, I could have offset that, right? If I could have plugged in this here, it would have accounted for that. And so, I think where it really started, because I think it's really important for me, and one of the key things that started with reading this book called Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh. He's this beautiful Vietnamese monk that passed a couple of years ago. And it was really my first real, aside from hearing about meditation, it was the first kind of real, acceptance and learning about here's what mindfulness is, here's what meditation is. And I really want to stress the importance of this because it's something that I still meditate to this day. Twice a day. And the importance of, for everyone, but especially leaders, the importance of trying to understand themselves can only, in my opinion, be done through being willing to be silent with yourself. And I know a lot of people out there saying, I can't meditate. There's a lot of stuff going on in my head. I get that too. The cool thing is meditation doesn't have to be sitting still, closing your eyes and trying to get completely silent. Because quite frankly, I don't know that that's really possible. What meditation really is, right, is being present in the moment. And so Thich Nhat Hanh says that there's driving meditation, walking meditation, washing the dishes meditation. And the idea is it's not about getting completely silent. It's about really being mindful and present in the moment. And one of the examples I like to give is the next time you walk out of a door, right? And because people do this all day long, right? We walk in and out of doors, 100 times a day. But the next time you walk out a door, do it about a quarter speed. As you do this, instead of mindlessly walking through the door, which is fine, right? Feel your hand touch the doorknob or lever, feel it turn, hear the sounds that the lock makes, hear the wind as it rushes if we're walking outside, right? Recognize the difference between the temperature from the inside and the outside. What do our feet feel like on the ground? What does it smell like outside? Does sun hit me on the face? You get the idea? It's about being mindful in that moment and recognizing the shift. And I think that's the important thing. And so that's where it started for me, is really being able now to hear myself. Now I can start to hear things maybe I haven't wanted to hear, right? The gateway too is awareness. I think for a long time, I was simply not aware of the traumas that I had buried. I was not aware of those things, so they were coming out sideways. And so I think that once we become aware, I'd say this often, awareness to me is the best medicine out there. Because once you're aware of, let's say, a personality trait or a behavior or just the way that you don't handle something correctly, until you're aware of that, you can't fix it, right? You're on autopilot, you're in reaction mode. But once you become aware of that, you're like, I didn't like the way that went. Well, I don't know how to fix that, but I don't like it. So I'm going to figure out how to fix it. And that was literally the beginning for me. It was like, I don't know what the future looks like to me, but I know what this meant. I know how this went, and I don't want that anymore. And then once I became aware, right, that was a possibility, that it just opened up a whole new world of things that helped me to turn dials and twist knobs and make a lot of change in my life.
So then I'm curious, at what point did you get to your lowest to then have to rebuild that? And what did that rebuild look like, and how painful and hard was it?
Yeah. So the lowest was probably just after 2010. So 2008 happened, big crash in the US financially. My business was left holding about $400,000 in receivables that we would never see. We had staffed up really large. We felt we were insulated from that, but the perfect storm happened for us. I didn't ask for help, right? I didn't ask my wife for help. I didn't ask mentors for help. I bare knuckled it and thought, you know what? Kind of buried my head in the sand. And as that kind of slow reckoning happened, right, as we kind of crashed, the lowest was, I was drinking, enough to alter who I was and not feel the obvious pain that was going on. Arguable whether it was enough to be dangerous, but there's no doubt. I can say one of the best things I've done is stop drinking. One of the best things I've done is live from a place of complete lucidity. And that place of not knowing what was next was super dark. To that time, I had always enjoyed the fact that I was comfortable in a place of not knowing certain things because I knew how I could figure it out, right? Oh, I don't know how to do that, but man, I know I can figure it out. And this was, though, a place where I had no concept of what tomorrow would bring. And it looked like, people are going to know, my wife is going to leave me because I've failed at this. And even though I didn't mean to do it, and I didn't hold myself negligent, it didn't matter, right? Yeah. So it felt like no one was going to help me and I was going to be abandoned. And that place of darkness was something I don't wish for anyone. It's a horribly bad place to be.
And so then when you then look at how some of these personal elements, personal lessons have reflected in your business, because I think what I really am appreciating is you have come to appreciate how you run, how you work. And I'm really curious as to how that then translates into you running a better business.
Yeah. Well, so I took a lot as that crash happened and the rebuilding started, I started to take note of what are the aspects, what are the characteristics, the personality traits that I want to embody, and knowing that I want to be integrated with my business, that I wanted my business to embody, right? I mean, that the business was less about just this thing that made money, but it's something that I'm proud of. And that's an integral part. I mean, let's face it. I mean, most of us work the majority of our lives, meaning, 40 hours. I mean, if you think about it, you spend so much time at work. I was thinking about this the other day. Most people spend, 8-10 hours a day at work, and they're with their families a very short period of time. Right. And so it is this integral part of who we are. And so when I really looked at that and I started to read more, again, now we're meditating more, I'm able to bring some language to what I want. And one of the things that I really did is integrated a lot of what I was learning directly with the business. Because I thought, well, rather than approach this from the standpoint of what do I want this to, it almost superficially, rather than approach this, what sounds good to customers, I thought, why don't I just speak from who I am, right? And why don't I take the really core values of who I am? And another great book that I was reading at the time called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. really brilliant book, comes down to these 4 things. And these 4 things are written into our company policy, the foundation of what we are. Because when I really read this book, it struck me so hard. It's being profound. The first one is be impeccable with your word, right? Beautiful.
Yeah.
The second one is don't assume. The third is don't take anything personally. And the fourth is always do your best. And so I thought about the simplicity and the beauty of that, right? And then I thought about, well, those are 4 pillars of a business, right? So, and it doesn't matter what business you run. If anyone thinks about these things, if you deploy those, I guarantee you it will take care of every issue that you have in business, right? How does that play out? Very easily. I get an email from a client. I'm going to, in the light of the book, right? I'm not going to assume I know what the client means. I'm going to verify something with the client. I'm going to seek more understanding, right? Maybe the client, like you said, we sit customer service. So clients pissed off, not at us. They've had a bad day. Something's broken on their website. You know what? It's going to come out flying. This thing is broken and I'm tired of this thing being broken. The third one, don't take anything personally. It's not on us, right? Our job is to do the best we can for them, right? The fourth one, always do your best. Right? That one's obvious, right? If we always do our best, right, then everything's taken care of. And then the first one, be impeccable with your word, right? Say what you're going to do and do it.
Do it.
Very simple. So, I mean, I look at, we can go through a whole multitude of examples and when, that breaks down, every time there's a breakdown, business, and we have this practice in our business. If there is an issue, right, that creates a problem, once it's fixed, like we'll do just a quick kind of postmortem, a retrospective of what happened. Let's figure out what happened so it doesn't happen again. I can tell you 100% of the time, we trace it right back to one of these things. But you know what? I assumed that what he meant by that was this, and it wasn't. It clearly wasn't that. I didn't double check with him. And that happens internally too. Dylan, or John, I assumed what you meant was this, and I went off and spent 10 hours doing this thing that you didn't even need. And so it's incredible, right? So I recommend that everybody read that book because it's really cool.
And so when you then talk about the 4 different arguments and how you will yourself versus change a system, how does that sort of tie into the growth of your business or how you see any business should be run? I mean, from a reactive space, from chaos with clients, and then obviously the crash, you had a very different way of running that business versus this business. And what does that willpower mean versus a more systematic approach towards running a business?
Well, yeah. So I think it's finding and when I say systems, to me, systems are indicative of, computer systems and their processes. They're as much about people involved as they are, and today, obviously AI is is a big buzzword and a big device and a big, beautiful thing. Right. But to me, it's about deploying those systems in a way that work holistically. So, you need to first define what that looks like to you. And then you need to test rigorously to make sure that that actually does what and the reason why I say it's really important, man, planning is so key, right? We need to define if I need to accomplish something. I have like, for instance, we just built a new customer operations tool. So we needed a way of, we've grown to a place where like, we really need one system that our staff can use that tell us the whole kind of life, the life of this client, all the domains, the websites, all the login information, the support information, the health and viability of that site. And the important thing, is to define up front, what does success look like for that thing to live, right? And that needs to be a written document. From that written document can come all the guidelines to create that, even the tactics to create that, and even the people that are involved, not just to create that, but to use that. I mean, the important thing there is that if you don't develop that, if this comes out of your head, too often we can run down a path of the new fancy whiz-bang tool, right? I see this all the time, and I fall victim to this. It's like, all of a sudden I'm like, well, what if it could do this thing or it could do this thing? And all of a sudden I've spent, 10 times longer trying to do something because of all the things it could do rather than defining what I want it to do and then moving forward. But that plays out in a lot of ways. It's continuing to, as I look at the difference between that urgency to what is more alignment today and more systematized today, right? It comes down to a very simple thing. It's right. You can run a business or the business can run you. There's no doubt every single business out there has a life of its own. Phone calls, emails, bills, processes, tasks, all of these things float around. We can either get up in the morning and open our computer and go through those things all day long, or we can start to prioritize them and start to define the areas that really do help us grow as individuals and help the business grow, and move, like you said, delegate those other things to others, or fully decide that these things are no longer servicing the power of the company. Because, like I said, we can run off very easily on any number of projects or designs that absolutely bring no value at the end of the day, simply because there's something to do. And so I think that's something that to me that the leaders need to help shape and then teach, because I think it's important that that's not only something that's guided by leadership, but it's something that we're teaching the people that work for us to deploy for themselves, right? If you're doing, basically, it's very simple to me. If you're doing something on every day that you hate doing, let's talk about it, because it either doesn't need to be done, or very simply means that we're not allowing you to be as effective as you can. We should move those tasks off to someone else, right? Or they shouldn't even be part of the daily makeup of your work.
So in that journey of transforming from sort of a reactive space into one in which you take control, would you say you've got, let's go with three steps, really practical steps for somebody who goes, you know what, I've listened, Dylan, but I just don't know how, or I'm afraid of just, what are those three things that you're telling them that, you know what, get your head out, Joe? And what are those three things that you would recommend an individual to try and start doing?
Yeah, I think I can simplify it to one. We'll see if I can come up with three.
Okay, cool. We'll start with one.
Yeah, the one thing, and it is, because what you're talking about is moving from a reactive state to a response state, right? And that is honestly the foundation for growth, foundation for change, and it's key to every single part of my day. And so, how do we do that, right? We all experience this regularly, very simply. You get the email like,
Damn it.
and yeah, I mean, and so very simply, I challenge everyone, try this for the next day at least. Try it for a week. Literally every time you can remember it, because this is going to happen at least 10 times a day for everybody. Simply take a breath. Take one full, deep 4-second in, 4-second out, at least, deep breath before you respond, before you react, before anything comes out of you, because that's what will help you, because this is where you're talking about a mindset shift. When we react, this is another test that it taught me a lot. The next time you react to something, try to hear the second thing that you say. So something happens and you react immediately. 100% of the time, the thing you react with, or let's go with 90%, is it's not you. It's not who you are is really in your core. And it's usually not the solve, right? But the second thing that you think and hopefully you say is usually right on the money. And some people, this doesn't happen till you see this all the time when 15 minutes later you go, oh man, this was the right thing to say.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I mean to. The only way that we can achieve that is to give us the empty space to allow, in some ways, to allow our body to speak to us before our head does. These things up here, these beautiful things, these computers that run 24 hours a day, right? Its whole job, let me put it to you this way, your brain is just an organ. Your brain is not you. Right? Your brain's job, like your heart's job, is to pump blood, right? Your stomach's job is to process food. Your brain has a singular process. It is to figure out things. It's to solve problems. If you don't give it a problem to solve, it's going to sit there and run processes anyways. So it's really quick. So what I'm saying with that breath is if you take a minute to just breathe, you're going to find that your cadence is slower. You're going to let your body come into the motion, and you're going to feel what's the right thing to say. You're going to feel now, how do I respond to this? And there's a power in that, because You may not feel it the first time, but after a couple of days, you're going to realize that you're much less reactive in general because you've given yourself time. And once you're not reactive once, it's a powerful like aphrodisiac, man. You're like, whoa, you know, it's really cool. I was super calm in that environment when everybody around me was freaked out. But I think about paramedics, right? These guys know this stuff. Like you don't see them, they're in front of somebody, they're having to stick their hand and fix a bone or all. I mean, restart somebody's heart. You don't see them freaking out, right? They can't. They've trained that out of themselves because in that moment, what's important is, you know, you hear this in, you know, from snipers, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. What's important is not speed, right? What's important is the methodic time to think about the action and respond to it in a meaningful and mindful way. Right? That's the really important thing. And the only way you're going to do that is if you give yourself the space, and that space is there. It's available with the breath.
I love that. And I think it's that moment where sometimes we either through emotions, through fear, through triggers, right? Your initial response is actually a sellout. Like it is not there for you. It's not. It's a response that is not one that serves a greater purpose. And being able to take control is what I've understood. I've decided to take control of a situation. I was watching this video where this, I think it was a diver. She was like very high up. She explained what she needed to do, and you could see her visibly shaking. And just 2 seconds before she actually dove, you see a stillness, a calmness, and then she dove. And that, in my mind, when you talk about this, it's how do you collect yourself, get control, and then respond. Despite the fear, despite the environment, despite the trigger, despite everything else. And that's really, really powerful. I'll let you get away with one only because it was really good. So then my question comes to doing it alone. You talked about you did not ask for help. You just sunk like and in the end, I guess there was a lesson in that. And how have you then used mentorship, support from community in order for you to be able to run a better business, but also how does that form a part of your system redesign or your system thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say all the time that it's super important that we realize that we first understand that there are people in our lives who want to help us. Right. I mean, that's the very first thing. I mean, all of us have, you know, partners, friends, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, you know, we have these people and realizing the strength of that relationship. And then outside that, realizing that there are, especially for entrepreneurs, is making sure that you surround yourself with people that know more than you, whether they're your friends as mentors or whether you're paying someone as a coach or a mentor, that you find those people that are in alignment with you. And I think too, that they're your cheerleaders, but it's important that they're there for the sake of what your goals are. Right? That they don't they hold you accountable. They don't let you get away with those things. So what we don't want in our lives, right? We don't want those people that we come to and we just offload this stuff and they're like, yeah, that guy sucks. And this situation sucks. And they're these people that go to me, that for me, it's the people that look at me and say, Dylan, what'd you learn from that? Dylan, you know, how do you think you could have done that better? You know, where do you think it went off the rails? You know, you talked to me about the 4 agreements. What do you think was the agreement that didn't happen there? You know, I think that's the important thing is that we, you know, first we have to realize that it's okay to ask for help. You know, I think that for a long time, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs see this, right? We get into this position where we've now become this thing and we think we need to know everything, right? We're in this position. I'm supposed to know. If I don't know these things, right, then I'm going to be looked down on. You know, my employees are not going to believe in me. When in reality, you know, if you have the right people working for you and around you, you know, they're going to love who you are. they're going to respect you. They're going to respect you more for realizing that you didn't know, and yet you were willing. You're going to teach them in this way, right? Wow, he didn't know, and he didn't just run off half-cocked to make that thing happen. He found people to help him through that. So that's what I'm going to do. So we're training in that process, and it's the same thing with our kids, right? There's a lot of analogies between employees and kids, and saying, the best thing I can show and model for my kids is when I fail, that how do I get out of this? Or when I don't know the answer, that instead of just blindly trying to run down a path, that I'm going to seek to find someone who has the answer to help us through this.
And I think the idea of being vulnerable, sort of, what does that mean to you? Before I start rambling, what is that, the idea of being vulnerable? Because I always look at the idea of having a mentor, being able to talk to somebody else as a very vulnerable act. What does vulnerability mean to you, and sort of how do you manage through vulnerability?
Yeah, I think vulnerability is the willingness to listen, first of all, because there's vulnerability on both sides. So the willingness to listen and hold space for someone else, and not take on their challenges as your own, be willing to help them through it from their perspective. But then as it relates to us, I think it's being willing to, do the work. First of all, being willing to do the work within yourself, to feel like you can stand your own ground in your own space and speak from a place. I love this. Speak from a place of a scar instead of a wound. So, meaning I've processed these feelings enough to be able to express to someone that I've learned from them. Or if I don't know, to be open to hearing the hard thing, right? To be open to, and, I think it's an acceptance of ourself. Right. At the end of the day, I think I accept who I am with all my flaws and all my successes, and to know that the people I surround myself with, vulnerability, I don't think is right in every situation. Right. Vulnerability is a two-way street. Right. So when we come to a situation, when we come and just offload on someone, that's not being vulnerable. That's performance. Right. But if I respect you and I know you respect me, then I know that I'm willing to share something about myself that you can hear, and I'm willing to hear what you hear back, or what you have to say back.
I'd love to really take it back to when we talk about sort of system redesign and the transformative nature of a system redesign. What would you say to people who have doubts around the concept of willpower is a lie? Some people have made it, faked it till they made it. They've really built a business, and you rough it out. That's what work is. That's what the business is. But when you redesign through sort of a system approach or system thinking, what does that look like to you? Number one, but then what does that unlock?
So, and I think maybe a way to talk about this is, is the ingredients for not just building a system, but, if we zoom out from that, of building a method by which you kind of operate, right? So if you're approaching that business, and yes, you're right, will only get you so far, right? You can definitely run down a bunch of the wrong paths. I'll say first and foremost, be willing to fail. And I'm not the first person to say this, fail hard, right? But learn from your mistake. When you're approaching that business, I think there's kind of 5 pieces that you really want to become the ingredients. First, you want to solve a real problem. So very oftentimes, right, we can start to solve a problem that we think exists, but that doesn't really exist, or sounds really cool and sexy to us. But at the end of the day, no one's going to buy it. So you have to be willing to come to that and solve a problem that really is there. Test rigorously to make sure that it's something that is identified and that others will see as a problem. I think a big piece too is build something that's reoccurring. Build some device in there that you can derive reoccurring revenue from early on. Build processes that can be repeated. You want to, when you systematize, I say do it ruthlessly. So build systems that constantly deliver high touch support and scale. If that's a computer program that's involved, do it. If it's people that are involved, do it, but optimize those systems, right? And you're the leader, so you've got to really evaluate those. And a big piece of that too is continuing. We've talked about alignment. You've got to prioritize the alignment that you have with the business. So we've talked about, I had to learn that the hard way. When your business is out of alignment with your values and your lifestyle, it's going to cost you both personally and professionally. So that's something you've got to continue to test. And then one of my favorite is listen more than you can pitch.
Wow.
Listen to your customers. It goes back to solve a real problem and talk to people. And when you've built the business, talk to people. We do all the time. Find out, what did I do wrong? How do you think I could do better? Or on the flip side, if you want to grow business, what service do you wish you could buy from me? You love all these things. What do you wish we did more of? What do you wish we did better? The cool thing is your customers will tell you. You want a great free resource for finding out more about your business? Ask your customers. That does two things. That's going to give you a lot of knowledge that you didn't have. But two, you're going to develop a real meaningful relationship because they're going to realize how much you care about them.
Wow. And I guess that's something that if you're not looking out for, if you're very blinkered, it's very easy to miss what's in front of you.
Yeah.
And that customer ability to give back to you is probably something that, I think a lot of people could very easily miss out on. So
yeah,
I have got the quote of the episode, and the quote of the episode actually the quote of the episode is, awareness is the first step, because if you are not aware, there's nothing you can change. And
I love
this
it.
is obviously from the 4 Agreements. And quite frankly, this resonates to me significantly, because when you start with your story, personal bankruptcy, nearly losing your family, and nearly getting into a divorce, alcoholism, essentially a burnout is what you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
You had to dig deep. You had to look within yourself, and you had to, I guess, in essence, remember who you are. Remember what you are. Remember your journey, your purpose, essentially. And whether you encapsulate it within the 7 mirrors and the guides to remembering yourself, I feel that the pivotal moment in anybody's growth, anybody's journey, but even more so, not more so, but as much as your own personal growth and development, is being aware of what you're trying to build.
Yeah.
And you can build the most beautiful thing, but if you're not aligned with the purpose and the goal towards what is success, the definition of success, I believe what we've spoken about, it really amplifies the shortcomings, the gaps, and you quickly unravel that notion that you can will yourself into success and will yourself through an issue, and the different elements start popping up. And so when I talk about this quote being the first step of awareness, it's the first step of awareness internally, but also the first step of awareness of what a successful culture looks like within a business, what a successful business looks like. And at the end of the day, if you don't want to be in a reactive space, you don't want to be driving yourself and pushing yourself to sort of limits, you have to find the purpose, and you have to have that awareness in order to be able to do that. And at a time, 14 to 18, 16-hour days, you think you might be providing for your family. You think you are doing something that is a calling. And yes, of course, you talked about the stage of a business being important, and the earlier stages might require a bit more. But at the end of the day, if you aren't really building intentionally, you will find that the success is defined as a reactive measure rather than a proactive measure.
Yeah.
And I love when you talk about the idea of being able to have a bit of grace to yourself. And that grace stems from being able to set goals, but also being able to move the bar when things essentially don't align. And I mean, you got 4 projects, new logo, 4 podcasts. You're busy, you're doing things.
Yeah.
And you might set that bar real high, and different elements of your day, your week, your month might not necessarily be going as you plan. but you have to be able to be aware that not everything is a failure. And
Yeah.
you need to be able to reflect upon where you're going and how you're getting there. And I love that a lot of the time that reflection and that awareness comes through that ability to be silent with yourself and to be able to meditate and take in, soak in essentially what is around you, where you are, why you're doing it. And and that example that you used about walking through a door, I really was like, what take 4 seconds to walk through a door. Why would I do that? Like, why would I on earth? But as you sort of spoke through that, it really resonated to the notion of awareness, being aware of the beauty that surrounds you, the elements around you, the sound, the shift, the changes, the moment, the temperature, every element of it. I guess there's a gratitude that we need to be wary of. And if we're aware, we are able to have the right processes, the right thinking, the right sustainable way of building and driving through a business. And I think what I love is the elements of the 4 arguments is: don't assume, don't take things personally, do your best. And what was the first one?
Be impeccable with your word. Yeah, be impeccable with your word.
And that's probably the most important one, right? It's like your word is your honor, right? Like, so
that's
so
it.
Again, and if you look at not only the systems you build, being able to be honest to all 4 of those, the systems for a computer-based or even people, I believe then we're really working towards building something that is sustainable. And you have to write them down. The idea of having it all in your head and doing it all from the space within your head doesn't really... You have to write them down and hold yourself to account within that. And I asked for 3 tips for an individual to get to a space. You gave me 1, and I've said it's okay. Because that one of taking that 4 seconds, this 4-second breath before you respond, I think is sort of cardinal and critical, because a lot of the time we come from a space of emotion, the space of reaction, space of triggering, and the ability to stop. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. The ability to really take that on. And I know that a lot of the time people think that they need to do everything alone, but we will be surprised how many people actually want to help you. Then you need to surround yourself not only with people who want to help you, people who know more than you, but also people who are going to be able to call you out on your BS, hold you accountable. And essentially we are able, when we have the right people around us, we are able to gain confidence. We're able to speak from a place of a scar as opposed to a wound, a scab as opposed to a wound. And we're able to accept ourselves for not only our shortcomings, but also for what we are able to provide within a space. For me, this discussion has been absolutely amazing. Whether I'm trying to solve, and what I should be doing is solving a real problem. I should be trying to build something that is recurring and something that is scalable. I need to be able to prioritize my alignments to a business, and I need to be able to listen more than I speak or pitch or sell. And all 4 of those elements really touch on the ability to be aware first, because in the absence of that awareness, we will not be able to make impact nor change. Dylan, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here today. I've learned a heap, loads. And I've got a few pointers around how I should and I can navigate through a lot of the elements that I find challenges with. From me and the different viewers, would like to thank you for coming on board. If anybody wants to engage with Dylan, I'm more than welcome that you do. We'll put the links in the bio and any way that they can get in touch with you. But Dylan, I don't know if you've got any words of sort of to close up that you'd like to leave the listeners with.
Yeah, the only thing, as I was thinking about while you were talking, is I want to point out that idea of learning how to respond. I can't tell you. To me, there's a superpower in that, and if you will accept that, that idea of learning how to respond, it will be profound in your life. is all I can say, because to truly be calm in the middle of a storm, and we all have storms, right? We all have little storms and big storms. But once you start, I'm addicted to it now. I'm like, man, let me see just what I can get into and not be triggered. Man, because it's like, I would rather that than fly, because the reality is once you get a dose of it, you're like, whoa, that was super cool. I was like able to handle that thing and move on with my day. And now I don't even care about telling anybody about it. I would normally bitch about it, but it's profound. So, move in that direction. Find those places where you can learn to respond. And once you start to learn it, once you step into that space, man, you won't want to go back, is all I can say.
Now that is profound. And again, thank you so much for joining us, and really look forward to watching you progress your business. But also, when is your book out? When is your book out?
It's going to be out in April. So I'm working on the publishing right now. And so you can go to my website. I think you'll post the link, and just give me your email address. And DylanClaytonBost.com. There's a link for the book there. Just give me your email address, and I'm going to send you out the first chapter, and then you'll be first to know when it's published. Really, I'd love for everyone to take a look and let me know what you think.
Really appreciate you taking the time out today, and thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Thanks, DK. Have a good day.
Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Transformation Leader. You can follow us at www.t4leader.com.